The hero's journey is a type of story format that usually follows a single hero going on some kind of coming-to-life story. The hero's journey has been a story format told by countless human beings across many cultures all over the world for thousands of years. In recent human history, the hero's journey has made its way into the world of filmmaking, with one of the best examples being Star Wars: A New Hope. However, this time I will focus on another film, X-Men, the one released in 2000. Gosh, it has already been over 15 years since that film came out. Time does fly by. In the film, it is also clear that it is Logan, aka Wolverine, who is the hero of the story. You may be surprised to find out that it is Logan and that X-Men, made in 2000, is a tale of the hero's journey, or you may not be either way. I will go into detail as to how it is. Warning, this analysis contains spoilers. We first begin this hero's journey with the ordinary world. For Wolverine, the ordinary world is him living on the road, going from town to town, getting caught into cage fights for money and finding other ways of making money. For Logan, this is his ordinary world. In the film, you also discover that he is lost in the world and he is trying to find meaning in it. The next step in Logan's journey is called the call to adventure. The call to adventure happens when some kind of an event takes place, either in a physical or mental event. In the case of this film, it is when Wolverine, who is accompanied by another mutant, Rogue, gets ambushed by one of Magneto's acquaintances, Sabretooth. Wolverine is taken in by the X-Men and Charles Xavier. Charles Xavier telepathically communicates with Logan and leads him to one of his classrooms. Charles introduces him and the audience to the situation at hand and the fellow X-Men, where he is then offered the chance to fight with the X-Men against Magneto. This leads him to the next step in Wolverine's hero's journey, the refusal of the call. As previously mentioned, Logan is introduced to the challenges of the movie, primarily revolving around Magneto. At first, Logan refuses the call to become part of the X-Men. He finds the whole thing to be a waste of his time. He also finds it to be silly, as he mocks the other X-Men's nicknames. Charles Xavier is able to convince him to stay at X-Mansion for around 48 hours, because he wants to help Logan discover his past and find meaning in his life. Which leads to the next step in his journey, meeting with the mentor. In this 2000 production of X-Men, Charles Xavier is the mentor for Logan, who is the hero of the story. Charles Xavier helps to show him the ways of the school and why he does what he does. He also convinces Wolverine that he can help him with his own personal struggles of loss and trying to find a sense of direction in his own life. When he has become acquainted with Charles Xavier, Logan reaches another point in the hero's journey called the crossing of the threshold. Crossing the threshold is when the hero goes from his ordinary world, or her ordinary world, into a world full of potential danger. A great example of this is again in Star Wars: A New Hope. Yep, the film is just a really great example of the hero's journey. For those of you who have not seen it in a long time, pop it in onto your DVD player and take a watch while also crossing off all the hero journey points. Now with the X-Men, I found the crossing of the threshold to be a bit more challenging. At first I assumed it would be the scene with Wolverine confronting Magneto on the train, but when I was watching it and looked at the timeline, it was pretty far into the film. And I became skeptical, because crossing the threshold is traditionally supposed to happen at the end of Act 1. And when Wolverine encounters Magneto for the first time, it seems like too much time has passed. So when I went further back and considered the scene where Wolverine almost dies from Rogue in an accident where he stabs her. However, I decided to say no to this either, because of the next step of the hero's journey. I came to the conclusion that the crossing of the threshold happens when he wakes up in the X-Mansion of Charles Xavier, because crossing the threshold implies going from the character's original ordinary world to a new one, and Logan waking up, looking around the house, and interacting with new characters in a foreign setting for him is a new world. It is interesting to point out in this film, for instance, how the crossing of the threshold and meeting with the mentor happen at sort of the same time in this film. They are not completely separate in the timeline of the story. Now on to the next stage, the tests, allies, and enemies. As mentioned before, I considered two previous examples, Wolverine confronting Magneto on the train, and the accident between Rogue and Wolverine as possible candidates for crossing the threshold. But after thinking about it more, they both really come out to be presented more as tests, and in both, for Logan, understanding who your potential allies are and who your enemies are. In addition, we also get the other X-Men, who will be Wolverine's allies, and we get to meet the other enemies who are teammates and acquaintances of Magneto. We also have other tests such as Professor Xavier and Jean Grey, both encountering severe obstacles in the Cerebro machine. In terms of tests, we also have Cyclops and Storm facing off against Toad and Sabretooth. We also have Xavier trying to negotiate with Magneto by taking over the mind of Sabretooth. These are just examples to give people some more perspective. Now on to the next stage of the hero's journey for Logan, the approach. The approach in the hero's journey is the moment when the hero and his potential allies get ready to take on a major challenge. In the case of this film, it is rescuing Rogue from Magneto and stopping his plans to turn everyone into mutants. In this case, they suit up into X-Men uniforms and take off in the X-Men's jet, which turns out to be a Blackbird jet used a lot during the Cold War. It is a pretty simple stage. It is basically the preparation for something much bigger in the story. We have our next stage, the Ordeal. The Ordeal is when the hero has to confront some kind of obstacle. It can be something deadly, fearful, physical, or mental. In the case of Logan, it is him facing off against Magneto and his allies. Mystique as she shifts forms to face off against him. We also get another fight against Sabretooth and finally Magneto himself as he struggles to break Rogue free of Magneto's machine. We then have our next stage for Logan's journey, which is the reward. The reward is when the hero gains possession of something. In the case of Wolverine, it is freeing Rogue from the machine and stopping Magneto's plans. There is also another stage called the road back. In the road back, the hero usually has gotten the reward from the previous stage, and is usually retaken by the enemy or the hero is chased by the pursuers. However, in X-Men, the road back is something very unique in terms of its design. So the reward is saving Rogue's life and others' lives from Magneto. The people are saved, however Rogue is nearly on the verge of death. The reward in this case is on the verge of being lost by dying. This is the road back in this example. The reward is already in the hero's possession. However, the hero is also on the verge of losing said reward, which is Rogue's life. Since she is about to die, our hero Wolverine can save her by using his powers of regeneration. However, it will cost him his life as well on the stage. Wolverine has to make a sacrifice in order to save the life of Rogue. The end of this stage leads nicely into our next stage called the Resurrection. As just mentioned, Wolverine nearly dies saving Rogue with his powers. He almost sacrifices his life to save her, but in the end he is able to make it through and in a metaphorical way is resurrected. The last stage of our hero's journey for Wolverine is the Return of the Elixir. In this stage, the story is nearly complete. The enemy or enemies have been defeated. The hero usually returns home or continues the journey. In the case of Logan, he continues his journey for he still wants to find the mysteries of his past. Charles Xavier is able to help him by telling him to investigate his past by going into the Canadian Rockies. Wolverine rides off on a motorcycle, and that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the hero's journey in the X-Men film from 2000. So what do you guys think? For those of you who have seen the film, does this open up a new perspective for you to view the film from? Does it make you curious to learn more about the hero's journey? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching this analysis of X-Men from the perspective of the hero's journey.